Do you know what it is that first makes me start feeling Christmassy? It's when I have my first mince pie of the year. So this year, I'm going to make my own. I'm going to start by making my own homemade mincemeat. Making your own mincemeat is not hard. So what I've got is some scales, and I'm just going to start by weighing out the fruit. What I'm going for is 250 grams of each: sultanas, raisins and currants. To those three, I'm then going to add 200 grams of mixed peel and 200 grams of suet. I'm using vegetable suet, so this is suitable for vegetarians, but you can use beef suet if you wish. Now we add 300 grams. I'm going to use a soft brown sugar. Now for the last of the dry ingredients, and that's some spice. So we're getting 2 level teaspoons of mixed spice, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. The last spice is some nutmeg, which I'm just going to grate just 1/4 of one into it. That's now all the dry ingredients added, so I'm just going to get those all mixed together before we start adding the wet stuff. With all those spices in here, it's really starting to smell like Christmas. So now for the wet ingredients, and what we have is a couple of Bramley apples. I'm not going to peel them or chop them in any way. I'm just going to grate them into this bowl down to the core. I've got a couple of lemons and a couple of oranges. I'm going to get them both zested on top of these lemons. On top of these apples. The rest of this fruit is not going to be wasted because the juice of all 4 bits is also going in there. At the moment, I've got 2 bowls, one with the dry, one with the wet. But now, everything can go poured together. And the last job is to give this all a good mix, bringing it all together. That's not the last job. I forgot, there's one more thing, perhaps the most important thing, and that's adding some brandy. 100 mils I need to measure out and get in here. I was a bit generous on that measure, but one of the most important things to do as a cook is just test your ingredients and make sure they're up to scratch. I think that's going to be okay. So this is the last job. Just mix this brandy in. Oh yeah, I'm feeling warmed and Christmassy now. Now before I spoke to you, I got a couple of glass jars. I gave them a good wash out and then I put them in a low oven to dry them out and sterilise them. So now I can get all this mincemeat packed into them. These now can get sealed up and left for at least a couple of weeks for the flavours to really mature. But through the power of Christmas and YouTube magic, I'll see you in a bit to get these finished off. That's us magically 2 weeks ahead in time. So now I can make some pastry. What I've got is some plain flour. I'm going to measure out 500 grams of this. Now I like this recipe because it's really easy to adjust. If you want to half it, 7,500, 250, it's simple maths. And that's the same with all the ingredients. But I never tend to half the recipe as pastry freezes really easily. So if you make too much, you can put some in the freezer and then you've got it ready for next time. So the next thing is to add some butter. No measuring, 250 grams, so 1 pack of butter that I'm just going to dice up and put in there. Now it's salted butter I've put in there because normally you would add salt, so instead of buying in 2 different types of butter, I tend to just use the salted stuff and then I don't put any salt in my pastry. So now this is caster sugar and just 30 grams of that goes in. Then you can get your hands in, your clean hands, and rub everything together. This can all be done in a food processor, but it's quite satisfying getting your hands in here. That's all the dry ingredients rubbed together. So now I need to crack 2 eggs into a bowl and get these whisked together. Right, they can go in with the flour. Now, instead of getting both hands in, I'm just going to get the one hand in to start bringing this all together and keep the other hand dry. It's going to need a bit more moisture in there, so I'm just going to get a little bit of cold water. Just put a couple of little splashes in and then stir. Use a little bit more until it just all comes together into a nice ball. This has all come together lovely, so I can just get it divided into half, flatten it out a bit, and then I'm going to get it cling filmed up and put it in the fridge to rest. So I've divided it into 2 because, as I say, I've made quite a big batch, and then if I don't use it all, the second portion can just go in the freezer and it can sit there for a couple of months or probably only be a couple of weeks because I will make some more mince pies. So while this is resting in the fridge, I'm going to make a cup of tea and go and rest myself. So I've had a good rest with several cups of tea. Now, the pastry's rested as well, so we can get this unwrapped and rolled out. Before I roll this all out, I'm just going to lightly flour the work surface. I'm going to roll this out into a large rectangle, reasonably thin, less than a pound coin, but thicker than a 10p, I don't know, a couple of mil. Right, so now I have a cake tin, like a cupcake one, and some cookie cutters. I need to find a cookie cutter that's going to be slightly bigger than these indents so that I've got enough pastry to go down in the hole. I think the largest one is going to be right. So let's cut a disc and see how it looks. Just going to push it in, and that looks the absolutely perfect size because it comes right up the sides to the top. So now I've just got to keep cutting them out until I fill up all my little spaces. I think 9 is enough to get me in the Christmas spirit. So now I can grab my matured mincemeat and get it spooned into these cases. You don't need to overfill these. I think probably I'm putting about a tablespoon in each, but it all depends how big your cake tins are. Right, with them all filled, it's time for the lids. And what I have is some star-shaped cookie cutters. The biggest one looks like it's going to be the perfect size to go on there. So now, with the leftover pastry, I can just get some stars cut out. These stars can now just get put on top and pushed down into the pastry around it. I'm not going to use any eggs to seal it, just crimping it on there with my finger. Right, last star into place. So all crimped, and I said no egg, but now I am actually going to add an egg. I'm going to egg wash the top, just the stars, trying not to do the edges, because I've made that mistake before. If you do the edges, you kind of glue these into the tins, and you don't want that. So just a bit of egg wash brushed onto the star itself. I've got the oven heating up to 200 degrees. Now the last job is just a little bit of caster sugar onto the top of each of these stars where we've egg washed it. So these are going to go in the oven for about 20 minutes until they just look nice and gold on top. So time for another cup of tea, and then we'll see how they look. Okay, the wait is over. That has been 20 minutes. I've had a little look. They're looking nice. Let's get them out. Now this is the hardest bit. We need to leave them in here to cool a bit before releasing them. These have had a couple of minutes cooling, and now we can just release them from the tin. They're coming out pretty easy actually. Oh no, I said that. If it bubbles over at all, that's when it gets sticky. I thought the worst bit was waiting for them to cool to get them out the tins, but I forgot about this bit. Waiting for them to cool until you can actually eat them is even worse. That was a painful wait, but I think they're cool enough, so I'm going to get them onto a stand, and then the very last job is just going to dust them with a bit of icing sugar. Right, I think they're cool enough. Let's grab one and give it a taste. First mince pie of the year, and it's delicious. Being homemade definitely makes it better. So You can do it like I did, make your own mincemeat, make your own pastry, but if you just wanted to make some, you can buy really good mincemeat these days, and you can kind of enhance it yourself, add a bit more brandy, add some nuts to it, buy some pastry and just construct them yourselves, and you still get that wonderful handmade look. So this is my first video on this new channel, so I hope you enjoyed it and you'll consider clicking the subscribe button down below because there's loads more to come. Thank you.